All right, so after some of those discussions, I want to walk you through kind of a case study of geodesign in action for some of these planning projects that we're working on, and really focusing on the countywide plan. So with me today is Jerry Blum. He's been a planning director, he's a planning commissioner, and he's worked with us. I'm on the consultant side, he's on the county side, and we want to talk to you about how we're integrating and leveraging all of the resources that Esri is helping to generate. So first thing about when we say countywide plan, the first thing to talk about is the County of San Bernardino. It is huge, and it's no understatement. It's the largest county in the U.S., and it's bigger than essentially all the rest of the Southern California jurisdictions combined. But it only has about 18% of the land within which it can build. The rest of it's mostly federally owned military bases, BLM land, whatnot. It's closed to conventional development. And more importantly, about all of its people live on about 6% of that land as well. About 85% live in incorporated jurisdictions. So you get this huge envelope, and then it narrows and narrows and narrows and narrows, and pretty soon you have a very tight box within which to build. But the countywide plan in that context is an effort by the county to try and generate a long-term planning tool that addresses not only the unincorporated areas, those are those areas in color here, but also for its incorporated areas. So normally counties don't have, they don't have planning jurisdiction over cities, but they do provide regional services, so economic development services, public health services, those types, law and justice for everyone regardless of where you live in the County of San Bernardino. So what is the countywide plan? It is a policy plan, which some people may recognize. It's another term we use for the general plan, but because we address those regional services, we call it a policy plan. And it's long-term in nature, and it looks after those municipal services and regional services. And then there's the business plan aspect of it. This is a new concept, and it's been applied in some jurisdictions, and it says it's not good enough just to set policy, but how are we going to track how we're progressing towards those goals, and how are we going to make other decisions on a fiscal basis and in communicating internally and externally. And then because we gather so many data points that affect the entire county, how can we provide that information so that all of the jurisdictions are using that information when they're making their individual decisions, so it's not just jurisdictions competing with other jurisdictions and only looking out for their own interests. And then there are between 75 and 100 individual little unincorporated communities in the county. Some of them sound like trivia answers, like Zizix, or there's a place called Siberia in unincorporated county, a place called Hinckley that is pretty famous. So all of these little communities are different. You have completely different environmental ecosystems. You have high desert, you have kind of middle desert, you have mountains, you have valley. They're all hot, they're all cold, various levels. Some of them are urban, some of them are rural. And it's how to make sure that all of these policies work for them. So the first thing is, where are we growing for the next 20 years? And this is really where the geodesign tools come into play. So we looked at a whole range of constraints, really probably about 20 to 25 individually, but collectively we compiled them into a story map to talk to the executive group, all the way down to the entry-level staff person to understand where we can grow in the county. And so this map right here shows really the availability of public water systems and sewer, so that your basic infrastructure you need for more conventional development, single-family homes and whatnot. If you don't have sewer, you can't develop more than one house per quarter acre. So you really can't accommodate a lot of growth in the vast majority of these areas. And the valley area here is obviously the area with the least amount of constraints. Another issue that I'm going to go into more detail is mining operations. So this is a map where we showed all of the various mining data points that we were able to gather to understand what it means. But first you have to kind of look at what does mining mean for the County of San Bernardino in the US. It is a huge issue. All of our cell phones, all of our machines, they depend on a lot of the mining. The homes depend on mining. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the County of San Bernardino alone has about 100 active mines in it, and then hundreds more inactive. And when you look at what does it mean for mining, can't we just get it somewhere else? Most of Southern California has less than 50 years of what they call construction aggregate, what you use to build homes and other buildings, left. And San Diego County, I think, has less than 10 years. And so you can't just mine this from some other country. It costs too much, so you need it locally sourced. But when you look at the County of San Bernardino, where can you get these minerals? You can't get it from, well, just the rest of the county. Everywhere on here that's a color or an outline color is closed off to new mining operations. So not only do most people live in 6% of the land, mining can't really even take place on most of the land anymore. And you'll have the obvious issues of mining operations aren't very compatible with how you want to work or live. There's environmental considerations, whether or not it's the tailings or whether or not it's the actual processing of it. There's the land competition, where mining is important, but you need to accommodate people and the economy. And then also, mining is really volatile. So we were doing some work in Utah. There's a place called Kennecott, and they owned a copper company. There's huge open pit copper mine, and copper prices went through the floor. So they said, we want to turn this over, do some development here. And they planned 2 or 3 cities, and we were helping them plan 2 or 3 future long-term cities. Then copper prices went up. Development goes back out the window, they're back digging. So it can just change to the drop of a hat. So it's really hard to integrate into our long-term plans. So what you see here is really, most of the time when you look at these mineral resource zones, they're in these kind of peachy colored books that were done in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and nobody's ever really digitized them. So we took the opportunity to digitize them for the first time for the county, and really in many places, and that's what these green and red areas overlapping, these areas where they have significant resources, or that it's very obvious that there might be some resources. And then the areas in this yellowish color are areas, they're unincorporated areas, but they're the parts of the city's spheres of influence where logical growth should go. So what you're obviously seeing here is this overlap, and we're trying to figure out how can you accommodate growth in the county. Lo and behold, the city of Victorville, back in 2010, had already planned how they were going to develop that sphere of influence. And this is basically like adding another Victorville. It's 80,000 future people is what this was planned. The county never approved this. This was just the city, and they can approve a specific plan, but the land needs to get annexed for it to develop first. But the big issue is, you see the conflict here between these mineral resource zones, and these are active mines, and they provide very valuable resources. And San Bernardino County is one of the only places where you get rare earth minerals outside of China and Australia. So the question is, how do you preserve mineral resources? There's also a little thing called a county landfill there. So how do you protect that? And at the same time, how do you accommodate growth out in the desert? It's going to come. Where do we accommodate it? So luckily, we were able to look at all of these mineral resources and figure out that there's this area over in the town of Apple Valley, its sphere of influence, and an area called Bell Mountain. And lo and behold, the town of Apple Valley was already planning this area for growth. So we're able to align both the town of Apple Valley's growth plans and the County of San Bernardino's growth plans and figure out a way where we don't have to sacrifice one thing for the other. So in the end, what we were able to get was, rather than, for example, looking at the place called Lucerne Valley, which is an interesting place. You're hardly ever probably going to go there, but it's really neat to go. But there's not many people who live there. But the current plan, the 2007 general plan, forecasted 11,000 people of growth to go there. And when you go there, you realize that's just not even possible. We were able to ratchet it down to 250 because massive mining interest in there, massive government ownership. So when we went out to the public, they said, oh, you're not planning massive growth that conflicts with exactly how we live? And we were able to show them maps and tell them, yes, the housing growth is primarily going to go in the valley, and it's probably primarily going to go in this is an adopted specific plan, and this is that town of Apple Valley growth area. So we were able to really make the lifestyle and the planning compatible for all of these people. And that goes for employment too. So where you don't have people, you don't have shops. There's not a lot of demand for offices out here. So we're able to really change the county's plans from something that was just a maximum build-out theoretical, almost academic exercise and didn't really help policymakers to something that really helped all of the people. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Jerry. And he's going to walk you through how we talked about it with the public and staff.
Thank you, Colin. Good morning. Every city and county in the state of California is required to have a general plan. And these are very expensive, arduous efforts that these entities take to produce these documents. And it results in volumes and volumes of paper. The study, the plan itself, the studies, the environmental impact report, resource documents, charts and graphs, just piles of it. Most of which all goes away at the end of the process and no one knows where to find it. In addition, there's maps, lots of maps covering lots of topics. Again, mostly paper. And in the county's version, we have an 8.5 by 14 maximum size of paper. 20,000 square miles doesn't fit very well on that size paper. So we actually have subdivided the general plan map into some 300 sub-maps. And they're supposed to be detailed maps, but as you see here, they're not very detailed, they're not scalable, they're not easily readable, and for the most part, really not used a lot. So when the county decided to update its general plan 4 years ago, we wanted to find a new system, a new way of dealing with general plans to make them more accessible, easy to update, and available to everybody. And what we decided was to not create a paper document and then PDF it onto a website. What we decided to do was actually create the entire document and its background information on the website itself. So it's designed for that very special purpose. So in one easy, accessible, searchable area, we have the goals and policies for all the elements. We have the official web maps, the official tables and information that's all in this accessible document. In addition, and this is something that you won't find in a paper version of a general plan, we are also able to link to other websites. We are able to add resources that aren't a part of the official document, but are useful for people who are looking to use this as almost like a research library so that they can dive as deep as they want into the issues that they're concerned about. And why is that important to the county? Well, the county is comprised of about 20,000 employees in 42 departments, and all 42 departments participate in the development of this plan, so they want to use the document. Paper documents, trying to distribute those and keep them up to date to 20,000 employees spread out over the entire area is difficult. In addition, we deal with 24 local communities within San Bernardino County. We deal with regional planning agencies and state and federal agencies. And it's not acceptable to think that all of those agencies are actually going to have our journal plan, all of our resource documents, and the most up-to-date version of that paper copy. Whereas when we develop it on the website, we can maintain that website in a very up-to-date fashion, and everybody uses it. So as long as you're connected to the web, you'll have the most up-to-date information available. In addition, we used the web maps to review inconsistencies that staff found between the 2007 general plan and what's actually existing out in the land today. And PlaceWorks prepared a web map with a smart editor function, and this allowed our staff at their desks to virtually fly around the county and find areas such as in the mountains at Bear Valley. This particular individual who was responsible for the planning of the area used the web map, identified an area that was a concern. We actually had an area that was zoned, a general plan designated for housing. But through use of the swipe function and the aerial backgrounds, he identified with some other information available in that editor component that the property was actually owned by the county flood control district and was going to use it for flood control purposes. So through the editor, he suggested that the land be changed to public facility and zoned for flood control purposes. That information, he left that on the editor and he moved on to other search or other areas. Once a week, the planning director and her key staff met in a conference room, brought the web map up, and went into these focused areas. And wherever there was a little dot, it signified that there was a potential change or an issue. They would bring that up on their screen, discuss the issue, and if she agreed, she would initial it, and the editor would file that. And then 70 miles away, in PlaceWorks, where they work, they could bring that up and amend the map so that in the future, it now shows as public facility. The hatched pattern shows that this particular piece of land has been recommended for change. So it's a very easy way to communicate, very effective, and very cost effective. The consultant didn't have to come out to us, and we didn't have to go to them. The San Bernardino County over the last 4 years has been intensively trying to keep the public informed of the Countywide Plan process, and more importantly, trying to involve them in the process through web surveys, through social media platforms, and also old school. 84 public meetings over the last 3 years, touching base with some 2,500 people. Now, the old way that we used to do it was we'd pack up our trucks with all of our books and papers, and we'd blow up our small maps into these big, large maps and put them on the wall. And they never seemed to be big enough, and they never seemed to answer the people's problems or issues. So again, using the web map as a basis, we used story maps before we ever went out to the public. We developed these story maps which explained what this countywide plan was, explained why we're going to a two-map system, and actually identified every single land use designation that we were using, described it, what its purpose was, what the uses you might find in that area would be, and then where they would be located throughout the county. We also produced 2 videos to, the web maps were kind of a new thing for a lot of the public out there. They didn't know how to use them. So we produced 2 videos, tutorials, to show them how to do it in a very basic fashion and some advanced technology of how to use swipe, how to turn layers off and things like that. And that was done to educate the public before they even got out to the public meetings. And what this resulted in is when we went out there and we would hook up our laptops and put a big screen up there and show our web maps, groups of people would begin to gather around this map, and we could maneuver the map, and we can bring in other layers and other information, and the information exchange and the dialogue was better than we've ever seen in the past. In addition, with this technology, every staff member had a tablet, and they could actually walk around the room and engage one-on-one or in small groups with people to have a more intimate conversation. We could also show them how to use their phones or their tablets, or when they got home, their home computers, to log on and use the site and the web maps. So on the tablet, we would always start with the grand overview of the changes in the general plan land uses. If we were discussing something with someone from Joshua Tree, we would use the bookmarks. We'd go right to their community, show them the proposed land uses. All those areas in the hatched are proposed for changes. Everything else, the majority of the land is not being changed, so the people who were very worried about we were going to come out and do something with their communities could see that it really wasn't the case. And if they were worried about a particular area, they could click on the hatched areas of change, and up would pop what the current general plan land use is, what the proposed land use is, and what the rationale was or the reason for the change. And they could review that and then discuss it with staff or go home and continue their search, and then they could use the email function on the website to forward us any comments or questions. And in addition to all that other information and the land use map, we currently have 46 web maps which are now available to the public for their perusal. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Colin.
One last slide, just to kind of summarize what we learned. So more information is better, except sometimes when it's not, but by and large, more information led to greater transparency and trust from the public. They had a great deal of distrust of kind of government in general and the local governments, and this got a lot of clarity for them that what we were changing exactly. We were to distribute the updates during the process, not just at the end, but repeatedly going out to the public saying, oh, we got new maps for you, and you can update it right now, not when we get you an email or not when we send you a hard copy or you get to a library. It really brings a really stale document to life. The interactivity, things start to mean something when people can interact with it. And then it's easy to link to not only other information that's internal, but also to external data sources. So you can say, well, this isn't the official data, but here's more information. You want to know about sand transport paths? Sure, you can go over to the California site and find some of the information there. It does, however, require stable and pretty decently fast internet. I know 5G is supposedly coming to San Bernardino County in some form or another. We always hear about 5G. A lot of these places, the internet is something that other people have, not what they have. And so you got a lot of these rural areas that only hear about the internet. And for them, it can be a bit of a learning curve. But all they have right now is a document. So it's better than what they have right now. And there is that learning curve, but we find that, and especially Esri has made great strides in making this more user-friendly, just easier to flatten out the learning curve. So with that, I'll turn it back over, and thank you for your time.